Perhaps saying my entire life is a little bit of a stretch, but it's just been just about that long. My first encounter with her was when I was 8. We just moved to a new neighborhood a couple months back. Now that we were settled, my father had gone on a business trip to Guatemala and came back with a friend. He stayed in our spare bedroom for a couple weeks. My family works in fashion. My mother, a seamstress and a tailor, and my father was a designer and business owner. Our house was generally littered with rolls of fabrics, sheets of paper for designs and patterns, and half-finished projects that were in transition from our home and their work. We had a couple bust mannequins, and they'd usually stay in the living room with some of my mom's work on display. It wasn't strange for my dad to bring over a business partner or family friend to stay for a week or two so they could work on ideas together. One of those nights, it was just me and Mom, as my dad and his friend were still at work. I was in the living room finishing my schoolwork, and my mom was in the kitchen preparing dinner. To add context, my house was shaped like an L. The living room was on one end of the L, the kitchen on the other, and the two hallways connecting them had access to the bedrooms. This meant my mom and I were on opposite sides of the house. I remember pulling out my battered copy of Fantastic Mr. Fox and turning on the TV right before it happened. I felt a tickle in the back of my throat and decided to grab a glass of water. When I got up and walked into the first hallway, something was not right. The hallway felt tighter. The cherry flooring my mom loved so much looked both duller and richer at the same time. The closed door to the spare room in the middle of the hallway seemed to get taller and skinnier. The white walls were curving inwards, and I was at the center of it all. I took a step into the hallway, and nothing happened. The breath I didn't know I was holding was exhaled, and I took another step. I was still okay. I took a deep breath. The faint scent of rotten eggs lingered nearby. I took a few more steps, ignoring the hairs standing up on my arms and the back of my neck. It was when I got to the middle of the hallway that I realized something was wrong. The door to the spare room was closed this morning, and the door was closed when I got home. So why was it cracked open now? My heartbeat grew louder. I felt it throbbing in my eardrums. The itch in my throat got stronger. I reached for the door handle to pull it closed. The handle twisted before I grabbed it, and the door whipped itself open. My heart dropped with it. When the door opened to reveal nothing but white, I was confused. I know I should have been scared, but for some reason I just couldn't be. It wasn't just white, it was a thick white sheet of fabric that flowed back and forth. I reached out and touched it, feeling the silky softness run through my fingers. It glided like the rain sliding down glass. The blood in my veins pulsed with every movement I made. My body knew that I should not have been there any longer, but my mind did not. This had to be just another project, just like the hundreds I've seen come in and out of my house. My gaze continued upwards, and I saw that the white fabric was not just a sheet, but a part of a long, white dress. The bodice of the dress was lacy and tight, and there were more ruffles on the chest than I really thought were necessary. Under the dress was pale, flawless skin lighter than the dress itself. Flowing down the bottom of her bodice were matted strands of silvery gray hair. I continued to look up. Her neck was adorned with silver and pearls atop the lacy trim. And her face, well, there was none. There was no face. She looked like one of the mannequins in the living room. We were both still for a moment, and my hand had long let go of her dress. Was she one of the mannequins from the living room? It was her arms stretching out and reaching for my face that had me realize she was not. Then, her head twitched in my direction. All the fear I should have been feeling before hit me like a train. My mouth formed into the shape of an O, but the scream I felt building inside got caught in my throat. Her hand was revealing itself from under the long sleeve of the dress, but it was no hand at all. It lacked the pale skin found mostly on her face, but was a muscly red mess of sinew and bone. Her nails were long, chipped, and yellowed at the bases, and they were centimeters from my face. It was enough to kick my ass into gear. I didn't want those hands anywhere near me. My brain connected to my feet, and I bolted down both hallways until I was screaming for my mother in the kitchen, claiming there was a strange lady in the spare room. She spent a few minutes calming me down, assuring me that there was no one in the house but us. We went back into the hallway together. She opened the closed door and revealed the empty spare room. A bed in the corner, desk in the other, and a dresser to the side. She even opened the door to the closet and showed that it was clear. Nothing but boxes. I didn't think to mention to her that I left the door open when I ran, as the lady was standing too close to the handle for me to grab. At this point, I just wanted to forget about it. My mother had assuaged my concerns enough for the day, and sent me back to the living room with a glass of water and a plate of fruit. I went to sleep that night, dreaming of my own wedding day. I was in a gorgeous bridal suite, with gold crown molding and large circular windows. Ivy sprawled across the frames and clung to the beams of light, and the scent of various flora permeated the room. I looked down to see myself in the same dress as that woman. My chest grew tight, and I felt the bodice digging into my sides. I shuffled my way over to the antique mirror, only to find that I had no face at all. I tried to scream, but I couldn't. The door opened, and the faceless woman walked towards me, her arms outstretched and showing slivers of the skinless hands underneath. I woke up in a cold sweat, hints of dawn peeking in through my curtains. I stayed still in bed thinking about her, until my mother knocked on my door to tell me it was time to get ready. I went about my daily motions and began my short walk to school, choosing to suppress the eerie dream I had that night. Then, I saw my friends and forgot about her entirely. I didn't even remember our first encounter, not until I saw her again a few years later at my dad's funeral. We were leaving the cemetery and I looked back at his headstone, only to see her looming over it and staring right back at me. I felt much less dread seeing her this time. To be fair, I didn't feel much at all during this time. But then I kept seeing her. Throughout the years, I'd travel here and there, making new friends and losing some along the way. At every major change, she was there whether I wanted her there or not. She never got as close as she did that night, but I'd see her around. She'd be on the opposite side of the subway, and disappear as a train would pass by. In the windows of the opposite train car, sometimes I'd just see a blur of white. I was on a plane once, and I saw her sitting solemnly on the wing while we flew thousands of miles above the clouds. That cabin smelled like petrichor that day. The night I ran for my life from one end of the city to the other. I felt long strands of hair brush against my shoulder at the bus stop. I didn't see her then, but I knew she was there. At no point had she made any movement toward me. All these times, we'd see each other in passing like we were just roommates with different schedules. She stayed on her side. I stayed on mine. Against my better judgment. I even gave her a name in my head. Growing up with folk tales from a traditional country means you know better than to start naming things that should stay unnamed. But I couldn't help it. I never spoke about her to anybody. I just needed a way to refer to her in my thoughts. At one point, I had to stop calling her just the lady in white. It meant little though, as she didn't show for years after that night at the bus stop. During that time, I managed to turn around my life. It wasn't that I was doing anything wrong, but more so that I hadn't done anything right. I dropped out of college at 19, packed a bag, and booked a one-way trip to Spain. I spent a year there, a couple more in Europe, and ended up back in New York. A couple road trips and a flight back from Canada later, I realized that I needed to find a better way of sustaining myself. Having spent my early 20s as a traveling nomad, I successfully stumbled upon a job as a copy editor for a lifestyle magazine. A couple years of bouncing around for them, and I landed myself as the creative director of an upcoming startup for those who were kickstarting their digital nomad life. As a part of the job, I was required to travel to such locations on demand. We needed a slew of content before our launch, and I was in charge of getting it. Being paid to travel and write about it was honestly a dream, and I was finally in a place where I could say that I was happy. I suppose that's why I should not have been surprised when she showed up again. I was stepping off a jet at LAX when I felt it. The airport just felt smaller than it did before. The people around me seemed to be moving at a step slower than I was. While the sun was still high in the sky, and its rays beamed through the windows, I couldn't feel the heat from it. The air tasted stale and slightly of ash, but I continued to move. I had a bunch of meetings early tomorrow morning, and I only had a few hours to spend in Le before I would be whisked off to Napa for the weekend. I couldn't afford to lose any time. I made my way outside to the passenger pickup location to look for my driver, when I saw her instead. Standing on the other end of the street under the parking garage in stark contrast to the dark entrance was her. Ileana. She was as still as ever before. The hem of her dress flowed back and forth as ever before, though not a single breeze came in our direction. I felt my throat get dry when I felt someone grab the back of my shirt and pull me into the street. My elbows hit the pavement first, sending jolts of pain up my arms. My head was next, and I went dizzy the moment I felt it crack against the concrete. My suitcase fell on top of me, creating another layer of pain and confusion for me. I groaned and turned my head, only to become starstruck when I saw two beams of bright lights coming in my direction with what seemed like no intention to stop. I was about to die. The next 10 seconds felt like an eternity. I barely heard the screech of tires before I was picked up with superhuman ease and flung back onto the sidewalk. Stars reeling around in my vision. I fought through it to see her where I had originally landed. She was crouched in the streets, feet pointed outwards. Her head moved around in erratic ticks, as if she was a broken doll, still facing the car. One of her arms was stretched out touching the car that would have hit me, except on closer look. It seemed like the front end of it had been crumpled up, almost as if the car had run into her and met its demise that way. There was a plume of black smoke seeping out of the driver's side window. The smoke was so thick, and I was sure it was why I was tasting ash in my mouth. Thin tendrils of smoke dropped from the window, one slithering towards Ileana and the other towards me. Why didn't I feel scared? With an ear-splitting screech into the skies, the smoke dissipated. For a second, I thought I saw a tongue dart out of where her mouth should have been. She let go of the car and got on all fours. She moved like a spider, both in fashion and in speed. I didn't have time to react. Her faceless face was next to mine now, a sinewy hand reaching towards my face like they did all those years ago. She reeked of sulfur and ash, strong enough to gag me. She sat in front of me on her knees. I stared at her hands, too afraid to meet the white void that sat where her face should. Her other hand touched my own, and suddenly I was that 8-year-old in the hallway once again. All the fear from the countless sightings of her had found itself in a pit in my stomach, growing stronger as she got closer. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't talk. I was frozen, and she was here. All I could do was beg. Please. Ileana. I thought. Please don't hurt me. Her head cocked suddenly, and I heard a deep, guttural clicking come from the direction her mouth should have been. How do you know my name? I felt her say. Her ghastly hand finally touched my face. And just like that, she was gone. Her grip on my wrist and her slimy touch was gone. A crowd of people had gathered around me, some reaching out in concern. "Are you okay? What just happened?" Questions blurred around me as I muttered that I was fine, and just needed to get myself together. I noticed there was a lack of pain where there was much before, but I didn't think to question it. I just had to leave. I wasn't allowed to for a couple hours, as a few witnesses had called the respective authorities to the accident. From what I understood, they had seen a man bump into me and sent me flying into the street. The oncoming car had stopped just short of hitting me, and I managed to crawl back to the sidewalk just as they approached me. I'm back in my hotel now, and I feel just fine. It's like that entire thing just didn't happen. If you can't tell by now, I'm still processing everything. I just knew I had to get my word out somewhere because well. She's here. She was waiting for me in the hotel room, sitting at the foot of the bed. The moment I opened the door, the odor of pure sulfur flooded my nostrils. The TV remote was next to her, but the only channel on was static. She doesn't want to speak to me, but I can tell that she's scared. She's been shivering since I got here. She left a single note on the desk that she pointed at when I walked in. Scrawled on the hotel post-it was an elegant script that had to be from Ileana. "They know we met." She just keeps staring into the TV. She hasn't told me who they are. I don't know if I want to ask,